Hi everyone, welcome to Topan Equira's webinar today on Government at Cloud, delivering a successful NDI OIDC integration. My name is Elwin and I'll be your host for today. With me today are Darren and Praveen, so allow me to do a quick introduction on Darren and Praveen. Like, Darren is our lead solution architect, covering products as well as overseeing solutions architect in delivering digital government systems. And he's also a technology evangelist, working very closely with our CTO to keep up with the industry trends, to identify key technologies that can be applied in digital government. And Praveen is our integration specialist at Topan Equira. Right. So before we begin, just a little housekeeping. As this will be a live webinar, so this will be recorded. Please go to our YouTube channel and perhaps you can give us a thumbs up over there. And if you have any question, there's a Q&A box below. So you may type in your questions at the box indicated on the screen below. And lastly, if you need us to present to your team or you have any clarifications that you might have, or we can always do a deep dive session, do drop us a note at info@topanequira.com. Right. So with that, let me hand over to Darren. Right, Darren, over to you.
Thanks, Elwin. Good afternoon and very warm welcome to all of you. And thank you for taking your precious time to attend this webinar with us this afternoon for the next hour or so. So my name is Darren. I'll be presenting, covering the presentation on the delivering a successful NDI OIDC migration. And my colleague Praveen later will show you a product demo later. So there'll be a Q&A session at the end of it, but just feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box below at any time. So back in January this year, when the migration from SAMUEL to OIDC was just announced by GovTech and the initial OIDC specs were released, we talked about the strategies for migrating to SingPass Corpus OIDC and how using the Equira Integration Center to handle the heavy lifting actually helps you transit from SAMUEL to OIDC easily. And also how deploying and leveraging the EIC Equira Integration Center as a common service actually enables you faster migration for your entire agency in order to meet the type schedule. But actually back then, it was based on the previous OIDC specs, which has since been superseded by the NDI OIDC specs that was just recently released. So today, we're going to talk about how to deliver a successful migration to NDI OIDC. Also using the Equira Integration Center, which has since been enhanced with the new OIDC specs from NDI. Having said that, however, that does not mean that the strategies that we shared before in the previous webinar are not, they're still relevant, by the way. Okay, let me just quickly give a brief introduction of what is Equira Integration Center, or we call it EIC in short. So basically, EIC is a suite of integration products tailored for the integration needs of a government system. So we have gateway services, the one you see on the left, which consists of an API gateway and a payment gateway. This is to take care of your API and payment integration in a way that is compliant with the government standards and requirements. For example, our API gateway actually helps you to be compliant to AIS guidelines and standards for your internet to intranet API integration. It helps to take care of the necessary things like authentication, authorization, and payload inspection. So it helps you to integrate in a compliant way. So we also have the identity services, which actually helps you to integrate to government identities-related services hosted by GovTech, such as SingPass, Corpus, or maybe MyInfo and all that. The SAMUEL SP is what you use to integrate the current SingPass or Corpus SAMUEL, which will soon be replaced with the NDI OIDC. We have deployed this to some agencies as of today. The OIDC RP obviously is the one that takes care of the integration to NDI OIDC for SingPass and Corpus, and this is what I'm going to focus on. We'll be talking about today. So recently, we have also launched a new product called the GovAD for your integration to the WOG AD, whether via the ADFS or the Azure AD. So this will take care of the authentication of your internet intranet staff portal using the centrally managed WOG AD user accounts for your agency users. So if you're also interested to migrate to ADFS or Azure AD, please feel free to engage us after this webinar. So on top of that, we have upcoming products like MyInfo, EDH, or the digital signing, which will be released in the coming quarters. So our products are able to deploy to various government data centers, such as the GCC, which I believe most agencies, you yourself, are actually currently migrating to, and also your more traditional data centers such as GPC, GDC, or even in your own data center. So we support all this deployment. So I'm going to quickly share 3 key benefits of using EIC. So firstly, it is designed to be multi-tenant. This is to support an agency-wide common service implementation. So doing that allows you to have a faster migration for all your agency applications, as you don't have to repeat the same integration and testing effort across all your applications. So basically, you have a centrally managed service that serves to serve your integration needs. Secondly, being cloud native and adopting the microservice architecture makes it very scalable and resilient. So we are running on Docker containers and be able to leverage on the cloud native platform. And lastly, but most importantly, is our commitment to meeting government standards. So being in the government business and delivering government projects for more than 20 years, in fact, we are 100% committed to be compliant to our government standards and requirements, so that you can be assured that your investment with us is protected. So this commitment actually comes in 2 ways. Firstly, when the specification of a government service actually changes, we are committed to enhance our products and solutions to meet these changes in the shortest possible time, such as when GovTech announced the transition from Samuel to OIDC, and as well as the recent spec changes, we have actually quickly enhanced our product to meet these new changes in specifications. And secondly, as the government roll out new services like digital signing and ADFS, so AD, all these things, we are also committed to build new products to integrate to these services, so that you can be sure you have a roadmap to serve your future needs. Okay, so today I'm going to focus on the OIDC RP product. So firstly, EIC OIDC RP is actually fully compliant to the NDI OIDC specs, as I have shared earlier. And most importantly, it is ready to integrate with something called the embedded QR flow, which is what GovTech has been strongly encouraging agencies to move to, instead of the so-called redirection flow. So in summary, you can work with us to migrate to embedded QR flow directly, instead of having to incur 2 migrations with the interim redirection flow. So a bit about the timeline that was announced by GovTech. So this was announced sometime towards the end of March. So basically, I'm sure you are aware that it is a very compressed timeline. So you only have about 2.5 months of migration wave to SingPass for all the agencies. So it's a very tight schedule. So together with the announcement of the timeline, there was a specs release sometime in April this year. So among the most significant changes are the embedded QR flow, which is strongly encouraged, as I mentioned before. So in place of the existing redirection flow, and the requirement, as well as the requirement for JWKS implementation for your key exchange. This is to do away with the manual approach of exchanging keys. So there are also requirements for stronger keys and cryptography algorithms using ECC keys and elliptic curve algorithms instead of the older RSA. And also the client, something called a client assertion, which is basically using a digitally signed JWT instead of client secrets for your API calls. This is for better security. There's also mention about sharing of digital service ID, which is now allowed by allowing you to configure multiple written URLs on the NDI OIDC site. We'll talk about that later. And lastly, the single sign-on feature that was announced late last year, together with on the first announcement about migration to OIDC. However, in the latest announcement, it was shared that this feature is not available yet. So due to time constraint, I'll be covering these three of the points that are more impactful in today's webinar. But however, please be assured, even though we only cover the 3 points, please be assured that our product is able to support all the changes, all these changes in the specs. So let me start with the embedded QR flow. So firstly, why are we why is NDI advocating embedded QR? In short, it is for better user experience. As you can see, embedded QR, in the embedded QR flow, basically the SingPass and QR code is actually embedded right on your web application itself, on the web page. So the user no longer need to click and redirect to the SingPass portal for the login. So basically, when the user browses to your site, the QR code appears right in front, and he can immediately take his smartphone and using the SingPass app and to scan and authorize, and immediately is a sign in. So there's no longer a need to actually migrate, move away from your site. So it's basically mainly for a better user experience. So in order to integrate the embedded QR, there's a lot of front-end plumbing to be done. So this is diagram that is taken from the NDI specification API documentation. So basically, you can see that there's a lot of plumbing to be done. But in general, NDI actually provide a JavaScript to take care of the front-end side of the integration. And for the back-end, you have to take care of it yourself. So I'm not trying to explain this complex diagram, but in general, there's a front-end side of the embedded QR integration and the back-end side of the OIDC integration. So our product actually cover both the front-end and back-end, which I'm going to share with you shortly. So there's also a sample code, skeleton code from NDI side, from the API documentation that tells you what you need to do to integrate this embedded QR on your application page. So I'm going to help you understand this block of code. So firstly, you need to load the NDI JavaScript. Then next, you need to implement a function to generate some unique random session variables on the backend. So this is actually your state and your nowns that you're supposed to generate. Why is it from backend? Is because when actually after the authorization by the user, when NDI script actually redirects back to your backend, you're supposed to validate against what you have generated at the front end. So if you don't handle it at the back end, you won't be able to do this so-called verification. This is actually a security feature to prevent CSRF and replay attacks. So at the same time, you also need to implement another function that does the error event handling. So in the process of generating QR and the user actually interacting with the QR using the SingPass mobile app, there could be some exceptions that needs to be handled. So this needs to be implemented by the application page as well. And there's this function that you need to call in the NDI JavaScript to actually start the QR generation process and to also initialize the session for QR login. So this is a block of code that you need to invoke on the NDI JavaScript. And of course, you need to make sure that this is actually started when your page is loaded. So you need to sort of override the onload event to initialize the session. And lastly, you need to find a screen real estate on your page to actually embed this QR. So you need a div of a certain size for the rendering of the QR. So these are the there's quite a bit of work to be done, to be honest, and testing as well. So using EIC, let me show you how we help you actually simplify this embedded QR integration. So on the right hand side is a sample code using EIC. So EIC actually provides another JavaScript that actually helps you to do away with some of the necessary plumbing. For example, the function that I described just now that you are supposed to implement on your application is now handled by EIC JavaScript. So basically, you just need to load NDI JavaScript as well as EIC JavaScript and initialize EIC JavaScript on load. And then your application does need to focus on the UI side of the changes. So this is how we actually help to simplify it. Okay, so as a summary, these are on the left-hand side, there are 4 key steps for the integration. So without using EIC and with using EIC, so you can see the difference. So without EIC, you basically just load NDI JavaScript. With EIC, you load 2 JavaScripts. And the plumbing in the middle is actually handled by EIC. So your app just need to focus on the UI side of the changes. However, do note that if you take this approach, there's a requirement to deploy an additional component in the application tier. So let me explain briefly why this is so. So this is your typical AIAS compliant architecture. So you have the internet zone and intranet zone. Of course, now we are for SingPass, CopPass, we are talking about internet zone. So typically you have the OIDC gateway, which is whether using EIC or not. So it's deployed into your integration tier. So this is for the back channel integration to SingPass, to NDI OIDC. So just now when I described to you the front end integration, so there needs to be a integration to the front end. So because EIC OIDC is actually deployed to the integration tier, there's no direct web access from the browser to access the EIC component. Therefore, we need a EIC proxy to be deployed in the application tier that sits together with your application to handle the front end integration. And we have the EIC management console that you can actually deploy to the management zone to be compliant with the IMA8 requirements. So this is briefly the deployment architecture for EIC. So next, let me talk about JWKS integration, which is a requirement from NDI OIDC. So why are we doing JWKS integration? So firstly, it helps you to automate your key exchange and rotation. By doing away with the manual exchange of keys, there's no longer a need to actually upload keys on the SingPass portal or to send by email or whichever means. So it's actually an integrated, automated approach. So it also offers enhanced security because with this automated key rotation or key exchange, you actually can now rotate your keys as often as you like. Not like previously, there's an annual key rotation exercise where you have to coordinate between various parties to actually rotate the keys. So with this automated approach, you can actually, anytime you can just implement a new key. So let me just quickly explain how EIC actually handles this automated key rotation. Although it sounds simple, but there are actually quite some intricacies on when you exchange your key. So firstly, I want to point out that from the NDI OIDC specs, the keys will be actually cached for at least 1 hour. So this happens on both sides, so that the endpoint don't get called in every request. So remember, the keys that you publish to your JWKS endpoint is going to be cached on the NDI side for minimum 1 hour. So that is what it means. So when you rotate your keys, you need to be sure that that it is handled properly. So assuming you have an existing key that you actually publish to your NDI, your JWKS endpoint, which NDI consumes. That means NDI already have a copy of a key on their side. So when you actually implement a new key, so there's a transition period you need to actually take care. So when you implement your new key and then you start publishing your new key, however, your existing key cannot be discarded immediately, because if NDI is caching the key for 1 hour, it means that for the next 1 hour or more, NDI could be still using your existing key, your old keys, to actually do the encryption. If you discard your key immediately after you rotate, it could mean a downtime, because then when the NDI respond back to you, you're not able to decrypt the response. So EIC actually makes sure that this transition is very smooth by actually retaining your existing key while you roll out a new key for a certain period, until such time that we are sure that NDI has actually consumed the new key. Then we will then fully transit over to the new key. So this is how EIC actually handles the key rotation. There are other intricacies that in the interest of time we will not share today. So yeah, so that's for JWKS integration. So the last point I'm going to touch on before the demo is the single sign-on. As I mentioned, this was one of the features that was announced in the late last year when GovTech announced that the migration to OIDC. However, the recent migration, in the recent announcement, it was not stated as not available yet. So as we are engaging the agencies over the past few months for this OIDC, we actually come across quite a number of use cases for SSO. So I'm just going to share with you a few of them. So first use case is when you have systems actually migrating in phases, and at some point need to coexist during the transition phase. So your users will likely to be using both systems in the transition phase. So in this case, for better user experience, you prefer to have, you want to have SSO. So the second scenario is that there are some agencies who have related service that the users may actually interact with in the same session. So it's a bit like your agency ecosystem. So you have a set of related services that your users may, in the same session, they may need to use across a few systems. So having SSO here also helps to your users in terms of to enhance the user experience. So if you have such use or similar use case for SSO, if you cannot wait for the NDI OIDC to be available later this year, our EIC OIDC actually provides a SSO solution out of the box. So this is just to share with you. So I'm also going to share a few key features of our SSO solution, which I feel is important other than the SSO feature itself. So first is on the SSO session extension. So if you implement SSO and you have a fixed timeout, which let's say 15 minutes. So your users, after logging into the first service, and they may take some time to interact with the service. And if they take longer than your timeout, let's say they take longer than 15 minutes, and then they browse to the next service, then sorry, the single sign-on is not working anymore. So it's important for your SSO solution to have a way to extend the SSO session as long as the user is still active. So our solution our SSO feature actually does have a way for you to extend the session. The second most important feature of SSO is something called SSO grouping. So what this means is that when you have a system that have single sign participate in the single sign-on, it doesn't mean that you want it to single sign-on to all other services. You may want to do some logical grouping so that there are only a few systems that are related single sign-on together, while when the user browse to something else, some other services, you don't want them to single sign-on. So this is another important feature that we do support. So in case you think you have needs for this feature, you're welcome to come and discuss with us. So with this, I shall hand over to Praveen for a quick demo before I come back to summarize it. Yeah, Praveen, over to you.
Thanks, Darren. Hi, everyone. This is Praveen. So now we look into the high-level insights of EAC product, and then followed by this EAC product introduction. I will also go through a demo to cover SSO scenario using OIDC. So as you can see, this is our EAC login page. Although I'm gonna try to log in with my admin credentials, so let me share you one of the brief introduction to what EAC product consists of. Like Darren mentioned, EAC is a suite of all the products, and it's a central single stop product to help applications integrate with different systems, whether the systems are internal or external in different ways. As you can see, this is our login dashboard scenario of EAC. So this is the dashboard, and as you can see in the left menu, there are quite a lot of products which are available already from our EAC. Like Darren mentioned earlier, we have API gateway, and then we have payment services, and then we have identity services. And in turn to identity services, we have 3 more products, which is SAML service provider, which was existing SyncPass integration service provider. We have OIDC RP, which is the current focus today in our demo, and we have GovID, which is either for IDFS scenario or Azure AD scenario. So this is at high level that we do have more products which are integrated in one stop product, although we are working more on for the future releases like Darren mentioned. So other than this, we have a user management section, which is mainly to focus on managing the users who are trying to access the EAC. So EAC is designed in a way like anyone can access the EAC. For example, as you can see, there are some users you can create here, and then you can actually control the user's authentication authorization, which means what exactly they can access within the EAC, whether they can read access, write access for a particular product, for a particular service within the product. Everything can be controlled using this user management. So in turn, I can say shortly that we are actually designed EAC by RBAC in our mindset. Also, whatever the action user have performed when he tries to log in, all those things are audited in our users audit log section, where you can see everything here. So this is our high-level introduction to EAC, but let's focus quickly on our today's demonstration on OIDC RP. So before proceeding with the OIDC demo, I would like to highlight the scenario which I'm going to take for demo purpose. Although the demos can be simple, but I just want to highlight one of the important feature which Darren mentioned earlier, which is SSO scenario. By using the current NDI OIDC SyncPass integration and with our EAC product in place, we actually can use a SSO scenario to log into different systems without even interpreting once again when user is already logged into other system. So let's take an example. Maybe that would be better understanding to everyone. Let's say there is a logistics company which have two. One may be domestic logistics company handling more domestic traffic, shipping, and all the stuff. One can be international logistics, which can be handling more international shippings and all those things. Let's say the user who wants to access both the services without SSO, the common scenario is he will be trying to log into each system in a different ways. So every time he tries to access the service, if he is not an authorized user, he will be interpreted with that user login. In our case, it is SyncPass QR code or a redirection flow. So what if we have an SSO in place? If user is not validated in any of these systems, he will be first time interpreted with QR, and following the other system access or any protected resource, he won't be interpreted again with the login scenario. So that's one of the important feature where you will have a seamless user experience when 2 or 3 systems group together under one SSO logical portfolio. And just we need one valid user identity session, and that helps you to seamlessly move from one system to another system within your agency or within your projects. So let's not wait, and we'll quickly show how EAC helps you to integrate with OIDC. So before going there, if you want to, we need some application details and configurations with respect to integrating with NDI OIDC. Just all those configurations are centrally managed by using EAC. So one of the important things which I'm going to show you right is how actually a configuration can be managed here itself. First, before going into OIDC, we just need to create a centralized profile. This profile helps us to manage in a tenant concept. That's why we proudly say that our EAC is a multi-tenant concept where a single profile can actually helps in integrating multiple projects. We don't need to configure again and again for each and every project. So let me just create a profile. To shorten the time, I will just copy paste some of the details which I already have. So these details, don't worry about it. These are mainly required for the EAC to work in a seamless way. So I just saved a profile called Phoenix. For this demo, I will be using Phoenix as one of the logistics company. You can think Phoenix as a Phoenix Logistics, some private limited company, something like that. Moving forward, by using Phoenix, I'm going to configure our OIDC profile. So mainly this profile contains some of the important information which application teams has to provide to us. Like, for example, if you see some of the key details here, service ID, which is actually while you onboard to NDI actually gives you a client ID in means of communicating with them for SyncPass integration. So this is called service ID. And we have a gateway where you can choose which gateway you need to use, whether SyncPass or CoPass. We have OIDC token endpoint, which is NDI token endpoint. Let me just fill up all those details while I'm explaining to you. So we have an encryption certificate and accession certificate. Like Darren mentioned earlier, this is one of the key important features they introduced recently, which is accession, client accession way of communicating with NDI OIDC SyncPass. So for communicating using client accession, actually we need to generate a signing JWT key. For that, internally we need programmatically a certificate or a key, I can say. That key itself, we can upload it here. So let's first mandatorily we'll upload the encryption cert first. This is a PKC2L format. Of course, some details with respect to certificate. And then as you can see, we can move on to our client accession section. If for some reason applications or agencies don't want to introduce a new certificate for this, and if they are comfortable to use the same encryption certificate for accession also, then you can simply reuse the same certificate by just switching on this toggle. Use encryption key for signing. So that means when you enable this, you don't need to upload any more new certificate just for accession. We will reuse the same certificate what we upload in the encryption section. So that means just a little bit of less cost efficiency than you'll have a two more. But again, for security best practices, we encourage you to develop, upload a new certificate for accession as well. So let me upload a new certificate for demo purpose. So some details about the certificate. Yeah, we are done so far. So a bit more on the SSO scenario. So this section, EAC proxy section, will help you to enable SSO scenario. This is mainly required for us to tackle the SSO systems who are actually communicating using the same service ID within an agency. So this application details section will help you to configure which systems are logically going to group under SSO. This is where Darren mentioned earlier, we can logically group multiple SSO systems by using these application details. So far we have two systems, like I said, domestic logistics app, we have international logistics app, and of course they have some unique redirection URLs for SSO purpose. So I'm just configuring those details. Don't worry, these are a bit technical, but I'm just trying to make it simply to understand you guys. So then there is a third tab called advanced options. Is mainly for the timeout options, which is like you can increase or decrease the time taken for requests going from OIDC RP to our NDA OIDC SyncPass. There might be reasons where you feel like some requests may be taking too long, some requests may be taking too short. So you can averagely calculate and put a time which is more comfortable for you guys. So and then there is a forward proxy. This is one of the important thing where when you go with IM8 policy, especially AAS architecture, there are a lot of tiers, ITTR, GUTTR. As part of earlier, Darren shown the architecture deployment diagram, you can see no way we can communicate to the internet services from ITTR. So you need a forward proxy. Those forward proxy details can simply configure it here. So I'm quickly going to save here. So once I save here, you can see the status, what exactly happened so far. We have configured a client ID called Phoenix Warehouse, and it is going to communicate with SyncPass gateway. And the status so far for the configuration is almost done, but it is still asking you to configure more details pending OIDC provider configuration. What exactly happened so far is we have configured our application related details so far. We never configured anything with respect to NDA OIDC details. During onboarding to NDA OIDC SyncPass, they will actually share with you guys about their own JWKS endpoints or client secrets and all those things. So those details you can come here and you can come in here and configure those details. So let me just copy paste those details. As you can see, I have enabled the JWKS signing certificate, and I also have to configure the NDI OIDC SyncPass JWKS exposed URL. So which I will be configuring here. So done so far. And again, you can see the status it is showing as pending access token configuration. Don't worry, we are done almost with the configuration. This is just with respect to our EAC to be more security reasons, and for some other reasons, we have exposed this access token configuration. Why? Because once you're done with the configuration, applications have to use the APIs to communicate with our EAC. Those APIs actually required a secure way of integrating with our EAC. Those secure way is like using our token concept. So I'm going to generate an access token for the particular client ID what we have done so far. In our EAC, we can see if there are any existing tokens, we can see all the list of tokens with their statuses as well. So far, none are active. So I'm going to generate a new token. You can also mention how many days the token should be expired. These are in days. So for demo purpose, I'll be just giving 1 day. Click save. As you can see, you have an active token generated. Also, you can see creation date, expiry date, and all. Once you are done, you have a token, just copy paste here. Be note that when you move out of the screen, the token will not be visible again. Due to security reasons, we are not showing again. You have to regenerate whole token once again if you lost the token. So let me copy paste. And I think we are done for the most of the configurations. If you go back to the section, you can see the status is completed. And you can also see what exactly we have done so far. We have configured all the application details and NDA details. Also, you can see what are the certificates we have uploaded with the serial numbers, how far the certificates are valid for, and whether this is active or inactive or expired, all these things. Even for client accession, you can see the certificate details. For EAC also have an automated way of key exchange. If your certificate is near to the expiry date, as you can see here, it is almost 10 years. Just because of demo purpose, I created like that. But if you have a very short-lived expiry certificate, when your certificate is near to date for expiry, you will be seeing a new button here which can help you to upload a new certificate on the fly. So that means without any restarts, without any scheduled maintenance activities, you can just come here and upload new certificate whenever the old certificate is getting expired. We also will be notified to the agencies when there is a certificate which is going to expire near. So far we are done. So let's not wait more than we will be quickly jumping into our Phoenix Logistics domestic system and international system. Let me go to the application and just I will be starting my demo server. And let's just go to our domestic logistics Phoenix company. As you can see, this is the login screen. Of course, they might have anything else, but just for the demo purpose, I have made it easy for you to understand. And there is another system I tell like Phoenix International Logistics Company. So maybe that may have something like this. So both have different systems, and both are actually trying to integrate with NDI OIDC SyncPass. And as you can see, they both are trying to use our latest embedded QR approach. What I want to highlight here is this is not the real NDI OIDC SyncPass QR page, although I'm trying to mimic the UI exactly like what NDI have, but because of the demo purpose, I may not be completely doing that. But as you can think that this is our experience, what you can see in the real time. On top of that, as you can see, there is also redirection option. As NDA mentioned, if for some reason you're not moving with QR, you can still go with the NDA redirection flow, which will actually redirect you to the customer page, SyncPass login page. So our focus is on the QR login, QR integration. And please take note that this integration is actually doing with our mock server. We are not doing actual integration with NDA OIDC. More or less, we try to make our mock server more realistic and even with the encryption, signatures, JWKS, accession validations, everything we make as a real product in our mock server. So on top of that, I want to highlight, because we don't have a SyncPass mobile app kind of scenario to scan here and show you guys, I mimic the scenario like if you click on this QR image, you will be actually interpreted with a user to be authorized in your mobile app, but we don't have that scenario. So what we do is we will just try to click here and you will be seeing a login successful for domestic logistic app. Let's click that. Okay, as you can see, you got your NDI SyncPass user details. So the NRIC which the customer is trying to log in is F1626 something, and related UUID. This is one of the new thing which NDI introduced. The UUID is actually a one-time mapping for the NRIC due to some security concerns in PDPA. NRIC is no more like you don't have to manage NRIC PDPA stuff in the application side. Instead, you can use the UUID to identify the customer. So I'm not going to stress on this point, but yes, these are two main important details I'm going to show here. And this NRIC is not hard-coded. This is for demo purpose. You are getting this screen. And also you can see some more details about the user validity session. User is logged into domestic logistics app, and this session is valid for only 15 minutes. And you can see the session started countdown. Like Darren mentioned earlier, if you want an SSO scenario, you need to actually extend this session for every time when customer is navigating from domestic logistics app to international logistic app, something like that. So as you can see, I'm still domestic logistic app. I will be navigating in and out, and I can do some browsing within the logistic app. And if for some reason you want to jump to the international logistic app, as you can see, this is international logistic app. I'm just trying to directly access the user info page. You can see there is no interpretation of login screen, because in the first time in the domestic logistic app, you already logged in with the customer F1623 something. But when you try to access the international logistic app, you never actually interpreted with login screen. You directly logged in with the user who already logged in with DL. So this is one of the important things which I want to highlight. Our product is able to handle all these things seamlessly. So this ends actually the high level demo of SSO. You can even log out. So before transferring my demo to Darren, I want to also show you guys some of the important feature of our EIC, which is access logs and traffic charts. These access logs are one of the important things which helps customer to easily correlate the logs coming from application to OIDC to NDI. If there is any systems of failure happening between these three systems, you can use our access logs to actually debug by using correlation ID. See, these are the logs. You have more filters, but I will be just using the what happened today's logs. You have more than 20 transactions here. But you can also filter using our NRIC. So as you can see, we have logged in with this user. Let me just filter with our last 3 digits. See, just now we have logged into international logistics, domain logistics. So this is the transactions you can see so far. We have logged into domestic logistic app. This is a user login audit log. And we also jump to the international logistic app for SSO scenario, and this is the success login. We also clicked the logout in international logistic app. So we have a successful login. Every transaction going through our EIC will be audited, everything here. This helps you for debugging purpose. And also you have a traffic chart. This is another view for your complete transactions happened so far. As you can see from 2 days, you can actually filter everything here. And hourly scenarios or daily scenarios, you can consider everything whatever you want. This gives you a pictorial representation of particular day and time. If any error happened, you can also see the error breakdowns here. I think that ends my session, and I will move this to Darren. Darren, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Praveen, for the demo. Okay, so as a summary, okay, before I continue, please just want to invite you, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A box, which later we have like 5 to 10 minutes to address it. Okay, so so to summarize what we have covered so far, so these are the changes from the NDI OIDC's aspects, and about how actually our product actually helps you to address these changes in the specs. So basically, as I said before, our EIC OIDC RP actually supports all the changes in the NDI data specs, as well as having the single sign-on for the, if you are using the same digital service ID, we can have out of the box SSO, even when NDI OIDC single sign-on is not available yet. However, just to note that there are some cases that require you to implement an EIC proxy in the application tier. So these are actually indicated on the right hand column. So for example, like if you intend to use our single sign-on, you have to deploy these additional components. Or if you are using our embedded QR to simplify your front-end integration, you also need a EIC proxy. Okay, so other than the changes to the features to address the OIDC specs, there are also other additional features which I would like to quickly share with you. So for example, we can do separate login, tracking of login transaction. So this is for the scenario where you actually share the same digital service ID across multiple digital services. So as I mentioned earlier, NDI now allows you to do that by allowing you to configure multiple return URLs. However, we actually do take it further by helping you to separate the transaction in our transaction log. So for example, you have two or three apps sharing the same digital service ID, we're able to split the transaction for you. We also have a mock server for your testing during development. This is very important because most of the time during your development, you're just developing against the specs and you have nothing to test against until you reach the UAT environment where you actually test with the SingPass staging. So before that, you're just blindly developing against the specs. So having a mock server for development testing is very important as well. And the traffic access chart, which Praveen has shown to you earlier, this provides a very visual way for you to actually look at your traffic condition, whether there are a lot of failures or things are just healthy and or you are experiencing a spike in volume. All this can be visually, when you look at the charts, it gives you a very immediate visual cue in terms of where things are heading. Lastly, what is called product as a service. So basically, other than selling a product as a software that we deliver to you in the form of binary, we also include, we also have services to help you actually install and deploy the products in your environment, as well as services to support your vendors when they integrate our product. As a one-time onboarding or as well as the ongoing support to your vendors and installation. So we are providing services on top of products. So as a summary of the key benefits of using EIC OIDC, I like to go through the 3 points here. So firstly, we are tailored for NDI OIDC integration. We are not just a generic multi-purpose product that you have to figure out how to configure to make it work with NDI OIDC. So for our product, as you can see just now through a demo, even the screens are actually designed based on the requirements of SingPass integration. So we are fully tailored. And on top of that, we are compliant with the government standards in the sense that we take care of your AIAS architecture requirements, and our product actually fit into your architecture and your government standards. And of course, the commitment that we discussed earlier. Secondly, it actually simplifies your QR integration by actually helping you to handle all the necessary plumbing and all the heavy lifting like encryption and all that, and digital signing and all that. So as I described just now, QR integration is actually strongly encouraged by NDI, although you can go with the redirection flow in the interim, but ultimately you have to migrate to QR integration. So using EIC, it helps to save you some effort. If one app can save a few days of development and a few weeks of testing, 20 apps or more can actually is quite significant in terms of the additional effort. Lastly, about agency-wide deployment as a common service. This allow you to migrate faster to OIDC so that you can meet the tight timeline which I shared earlier. So these are the 3 key points I would like you to take back after this webinar. So with this, I shall move on to the Q&A. Okay, there are some interesting questions that I'm seeing. Let me take the first easier question. Okay, so basically the question is about whether the configuration details are actually stored in the database. So the answer is actually yes. We do store persist in the database. However, when the instance, the EIC instance actually starts up, it actually caches the configuration in memory so that you don't have to access the database every time. So on top of that, when you actually do some configuration changes through the EIC management console, which I shared earlier, the console will actually write the changes to the database. At the same time, it will actually do an API call to the instances that are to actually refresh on the database so that any changes can be immediately taking effect without having to restart any services. So it's a no downtime change configuration. And then I have a question about whether EIC OIDC can support .NET Core technology. So basically, because EIC is designed to be language agnostic, on the front end side, it's all JavaScript, which is common to all. And the back end side is actually a RESTful API call. Whether you are running Java, .NET or Node.js, a REST call is actually language agnostic. It's supported by all languages. So it's basically a HTTP call to our so-called API endpoint to integrate to our product. So the answer is yes, it does support .NET. So there's a question about SSO as well. Does the SSO control the concurrent login from different browsers or devices? Okay, I guess to answer this question, SSO is not meant to be taking over your web sessions. So SSO is a means of doing authentication without having the user to log in to provide the credentials again. So in terms of the concurrent login, I guess it still has to be handled by the application. So it doesn't replace your web session. There's one question about separate tracking of login transactions. So is it a report format? Is there a UI? So just now in the demo, Praveen actually show you the module for actually querying the login transaction logs. So there's a UI for you to actually look at all your login transactions and which app is actually triggering it, and assuming you have deployed our integrate our proxy. So it is available on the UI through the management console, and there will be a feature for you to download as a report as well, and probably in the CSV format. So there's also a question about SSO integration with EIC, whether it applies for different digital services ID, digital service ID under COPPAS. So for example, you have 4 applications with different digital service ID accessible via COPPAS. So can one toggle between the 4 apps without the need to re-log in again? Okay, so just now I mentioned about our SSO solution that it is supported for the same digital service ID. There's a reason behind that, mainly because we are actually the relying party. We are actually not the IDP. IDP stands for Identity Provider. So in order for us to support SSO, it has to be within the same digital service ID, because SingPass is actually the IDP. So we are actually not playing the role of the IDP, and therefore when your user logs into one digital service, we cannot be sure that the user has the same authorization for the other digital service. So as a relying party, we are not the right component to actually implement this SSO across different digital services. For that, we have to leave it to NDI, OIDC, SSO when it becomes available. So does the product support backend on GCC and the client integrate on GDC? Okay, I think this is one of the most asked questions. In fact, in our previous webinar, somebody asked this also. So basically, if the product is actually deployed on GCC and your application is actually sitting on GDC, I would say technically, as long as you can solve the connectivity, you can actually consume it from GDC over to GCC. But there's a caveat to that, because everything is on the internet zone. So to solve the connectivity and to be compliant fully with EIAS requirements, you have to jump over a few hops from your GDC internet zone to your GDC intranet zone. And then from the intranet zone, you cross the cloud landing zone into your GCC intranet zone. And then from there, you have to another hop from the GCC intranet to the GCC internet IT tier, integration tier. So technically, I would say it is possible, but I wouldn't recommend deploying a solution like this, because there's too many hops and there are many points of failure. So I guess there's no more question. And we're running out of time. Maybe over to Alvin to wrap up the session. Thanks for all your time. Before that, I would like to say that in case any of you have any more questions and you want to know more about how our solution works and our product, do feel free to engage us for a technical deep dive session for your to understand your requirement, as well as to share more about our solution.
Yeah, right.
Thank
you, Darren. Yeah,
thank you.
Right, thank you everyone for staying with us throughout the session, and I hope you enjoyed the session. Just want to highlight that if you need us to present to you and your team, or like as per what Darren I just mentioned, that you have some clarifications, and we can always do a deep dive session with you guys. So you can always drop us a note at info@topanequira.com. Yeah, then we will get in touch with you. Yeah, right. So thanks all for attending this webinar today. Thank you, and stay safe. Thank you.